Welcome everybody to another edition of Fins Up Podcast with your host Chad J.C. Martin. It's not our final Fins Up Podcast of the year. We are going to be doing sporadically. We have men's basketball coming up. March Madness will be coming up to be upon us before we know it actually. Right. The men's basketball team is kind of rolling right now. I think they're 6-1 as of this recording of this podcast. So get behind your Rebs. We will touch on highlights every now and then. We'll get on there as some of these sports come to an end and they come to their conclusions during the months to come. We'll start covering some of that. Some of the signings, we'll do that. Signing day, we'll probably cover that. A lot of things are going to happen. We really do appreciate everybody tuning in for this first round of Fins Up Podcast. You know, it's us getting our feet wet, really. We hated had to come to an end at the Egg Bowl in a pretty ugly way. Nothing really positive to bring from the Egg Bowl. It just kind of stunk all the way around.
And it's so funny because Ole Miss fans felt so optimistic following that Texas A&M game.
Oh, yeah.
You start a true freshman on the road against I think at the time they were number 8 or number 9 in the country. They go in there, they pull off the upset. You think, hey, we got Vanderbilt. Yeah, it's a road game, but it's Vanderbilt, and then we got a home game against Mississippi State.
Two should be wins.
We can win one of those.
Yeah.
We can win one of those and go to a bowl game. Of course, that blew up in our face. We also talked going into the Egg Bowl last week. We talked about how Mississippi State wasn't eligible for a bowl game because they were 4-7.
Yep.
And they were trying to play spoiler for Ole Miss. Well, we were half right. They did play spoiler for Ole Miss, but in the process of becoming 5-7, because enough teams didn't hit that 6-6 mark to go to a bowl game, Mississippi State, with their victory over Ole Miss, actually earned themselves a bowl invitation.
Exactly. We're so used to winning at Ole Miss now at this point that this is kind of an unusual feeling for everybody. And I understand everybody's down and out about this whole thing, but when you look at all the injuries they've had, just the sheer turnover and talent they had.
I mean, they started 11 true freshmen this year.
Exactly. We talked about this at the very beginning of the year. We kind of was worried it was going to be kind of a tough year in some areas just because of all the losses we suffered. And then the injuries going into the season didn't help. So many things going against the Rebels.
But, you know, we kind of thought there was more depth on this team than what there actually turned out to be.
Oh, yeah.
They needed a lot of help in the second. They needed depth in the secondary. They needed depth on that offensive line at the running back spot. But, man, what hurt was what I pointed out in that very first podcast as the weakest part of this Ole Miss football team, and that's the linebacking core.
Oh, yeah, and it showed.
The linebacker play this year was so horrendous. It felt like at times, you know, they weren't even playing a full 11 men on defense because linebackers just weren't there.
Exactly.
And a lot of the time, Ole Miss played maybe with one linebacker out there because the linebacking core was just that bad. I mean, now, DeMarcus Gates, hey, you know, all props to him. He tore it up this year, but
one man can't do it.
Right. You can't do it all by yourself.
No, you cannot.
Especially not in this sport. And I know that no sport, one man can do it by himself unless it is an individual sport. But in team sports, when you think about it, football is the ultimate team sport.
Exactly.
You got to have 11 guys on offense, 11 guys on defense, 11 guys on special teams, making this thing go week in and week out. So, you know, even though he basically missed a full game of football with the second half of Vanderbilt getting ejected right after halftime, and the first half against State, Gates was hands down the best linebacker. And, of course, we know Marquise Haynes, best defensive lineman that we had this year. It's pretty much a foregone conclusion that he's going pro next year.
Oh, yeah, I would be shocked if he came back for another season.
He's pretty much come out and said it.
But, I guess that's one of the things, and, you know, defensive coordinator is now retiring. He's been around the league, and he called a lot of flack for how bad this team was this year. I get that. This is a man who's been around a lot of years, who's coached a lot of top defenses. It's not like he sucks at being a defensive coordinator. There's simply no talent there like we thought there was. And we got ahead of ourselves when it came to thinking we were going to have that depth like you were talking about. And, you know, in 2014, Ole Miss had one of the top defenses in the country. But look at all the talent that was there at the time. And last year, I mean, still, even with some of the losses they suffered, they still had a lot of top talent in the country.
And we talked about how good, you know, we were singing the praises of this young receiving corps coming into this year. And deservedly so. I mean, they turned out that, you know, they're pretty good.
And they'll get better.
But what hurt was the elder statesman. Like Quincy Adeboyejo disappeared for long stretches of the season.
Yep.
Like basically the whole middle part of the season, you couldn't find Quincy Adeboyejo. Like,
so many drops.
He went AWOL,
and stuff this year,
and that was from DeMore. Like DeMore was the #1 wide receiver on the depth chart, and while he made a crazy catch against Texas A&M that was huge for the Ole Miss offense, he dropped so many passes on easy. I don't want to call them run of the mill, but just pedestrian type catches that the ball is delivered right to you, just catch it and then run.
Yeah, but we've seen a lot of that.
Well, we saw a lot of that against Vanderbilt, and of course it reared its ugly head again against State. But I mean, you think back to the early part of the season, Ole Miss was competitive in a lot of games against a lot of tough opponents. It just always imploded in the second half. Second half when that depth needed to rise to the challenge, and they just didn't. So,
and the more they lost to injury, just the worse it seemed to get.
Yeah.
Then they were having to keep it up, and Chad Kelly himself kind of had to keep that thing afloat until he finally goes down with the injury.
Right, and once Chad Kelly went down, it's like all the morale just left this team.
Yeah, it really did. But I think the one shining light is, Shea Patterson. He's the real deal.
Right, he's going to live up to the hype.
That kid has been out there balling as a true freshman, doing everything he could. It didn't help not to have Evan Ingram last week, because then it really takes out a huge part of your offense.
And how sad is that Evan Ingram doesn't get to play in his final home game?
Yeah, I know.
I hated that for him.
That was pretty tough. But, I mean, a lot of things, and I guess you can, and a lot of people will say, oh, such a bad year, and when you see the hype from the opposing school, because let's be honest, if we'd have won that game, we'd be talking smack and talking trash. We started this podcast out this year. That premise alone is what this podcast is about. For our school to talk trash, to be behind the school, to rah-rah the school and cheerlead the school. So, that is what that is, and that's fine. But I thought, the athletic director came out and laid out his statement, and, let's be honest, he really loves this school too. He wants to win and all that. And they're not out pointing fingers. They're trying to get things turned the right way. We know that there's going to be a big hunt. They're not going to be wide open about that, and then until they probably come down to a final decision on what they're going to do and who they're going to land on as far as defensive coordinator goes. But Ole Miss is going to be all right. They'll be out recruiting. I think next year is a whole new year. You've got all these freshmen that had to play this year. It's another year's of experience under their belt. They'll go through a whole nother spring. Probably the worst part about not getting to a bowl was those extra practices they could have got.
And 15 extra bowls or extra 15 practices that you have there, but also that extra game experience.
Exactly. And it matters. Every single game matters, especially in a sport like football because there's so few. You don't get a lot of games a season, and any of that. So
because of the physical toll that it takes on their bodies.
And you see, and these football players can get hurt sometimes without any contact. These are big, strong, bulky dudes that carry a lot of mass, a lot of power behind them, and sometimes your joints and stuff just can't keep up, and that's why we see a lot of ACL tears and things like that. So, but you know what? I'm looking forward to next year. Definitely not writing it off. And as we go forward with Fins Up Podcast, we're not just going to cover football. We're going, like I said, we got spring coming up, spring baseball coming up. We got basketball coming up. A lot of track and field, I think, is coming up too. So we're still up in there about some of the things we're going to do and how many shows we'll do and when our next one is. So just stay tuned. We'll certainly let you guys know. But we definitely want to say thank you for following us and joining us along on this journey. It's been awesome. And I think next year will be even bigger and better. We're going to try to get some people on the show and have guests on the show next year. That's our goal, especially now that we've kind of started to find our way and how we want to do these things and what we kind of want to do to it. And we'll probably make a few more trips to the vault next year. Kind of planning that out now, see how that's going to go. So, guys, we appreciate your time. We're going to get out here. I know this is going to be a short one, but after you get your butt kicked like we did and the season ended on a downer like it did, you don't want to spend a lot of time. You want to forget about it. You want to move on. We look forward to next year and what these guys can do. Keep supporting your Rebels. I think what they're doing is going to be awesome. Moving forward, it's going to be awesome. Don't look for this trend because it was a bad year this year and the injury bug hit us that it's going to be this way all the time.
A direct result of this bad season has been that so many high-level recruits have decommitted from this recruiting class.
That is the thing.
And they've either decommitted and committed elsewhere, or they decommitted and they're just keeping their
options.
They're
watching.
They're keeping their prospects open to find what the best situation. And they might find themselves in Oxford when it's all said and done. But right now, recruiting class for next year is looking bad.
Yeah.
Bad.
And it might take a good season next year to rejuvenate that, but that's what happens in a losing year. So we're gonna see, and we'll be covering a lot of that when it comes time for all that good stuff. I forgot when signing day is.
It's in February.
And as we get closer to that, we'll do a show, find out who has decided they're coming to Ole Miss and all that good stuff. Guys, we appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in. Talk to you soon. Until then, hotty toddy, fins up.